we must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world.
The relationship between the United States and Turkey has taken another gigantic hit. It appears Turkey has joined the other powerhouses of the Eastern world, Russia and China, by preparing for economic warfare against the United States in the future. At the very least, it strongly symbolizes the end of the 70-year alliance between Turkey and the United States. Turkey has decided to pull all of its gold reserves from the US Federal Reserve System. The Central Bank of Turkey requested that the 220 tons of gold be returned to Turkey. At the same time, two Turkish banks, Ziraat and Vakif Bank, chose to remove their 95 ton of gold from the Federal Reserve as well. The reason for this move is believed to be in anticipation of the US sanctions on Turkey. This is the US's way of punishing Turkey for not going along with the plans in Syria and for becoming closer allies with Russia, China, and Iran.
Countries are banding together to dump the United States dollar, which could and will have serious repercussions on our economy. Now, I know that Russia has talked about it in the past. There's even been rumors that they're exchanging it for gold, probably at some level, but not completely. And also China has expressed their concern over this and actually has dumped some of the US dollar. They've even threatened to dump more, and I could imagine with Trump's latest tariffs on Chinese steel exports, we could get a little more pushback from China and more threats to dump the United States dollar, something that they've talked about for quite a while. Well, now Iran has jumped in on the action. Check out this report from rt.com, and it's titled "Iran Bans Use of the United States Dollar in Trade," officially banned. Now, the report details that Tehran has announced that purchase orders by merchants that are based on U.S. currency would no longer be allowed to go through the import procedures. According to local media, the policy is in line with an official request by the Central Bank of Iran and is specifically meant to address fluctuations in market rates of the US dollar.
This is the wealthiest country the world has ever known. And yet, he's clothed in handouts. His parents can't find work. They have no home of their own. And every morning, they come to the Manor House charity, where the poor of Baltimore meet for a little food, warmth, and compassion.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Together we will determine the course of America and the world.
The United States is not a country, it's a massive shopping center. It makes wars to take other people's resources. It controls the media globally and has puppet states all over the world. But today, things are changing. As Russia, China, Turkey and Iran move towards checkmating America, things aren't looking so great for the dollar. So protect yourself from a dollar collapse. Keep your assets well diversified by holding foreign mutual funds, gold and other commodities.
Now, the banks have criticized the move, saying Moody's decision is backward-looking. Is it?
Look, the banks are dead. You know, there's a famous Russian short story, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, about a dead man who hears everyone talking around him. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the global banks. They're dead. They're corpses. No amount of aerosol trying to make the stink go away is going to change that. That's what Christine Lagarde and these other folks at the IMF have failed to come to terms with. There's a huge problem in the banking sector. In their core, they are as dead as a corpse.
Well, India has dealt a fresh blow to America and Europe's attempts to force Iran to stop enriching uranium. Just 1 month before unprecedented sanctions against the Islamic Republic come into force, New Delhi, the biggest buyer of Iranian oil, said their trade will not be affected. With this story is RT's Priya Shrida.
India has taken a stand despite Washington's ongoing pressure to stop buying oil from Iran. India is forging ahead.
Now, if the United States said they've promised that sanctions against any country that continues to buy Iranian oil, apart from those it has made exempt, would it dare actually sanction China, do you think?
No, the U.S. cannot sanction China because China holds $3 trillion worth of U.S. bonds and dollars, and China could quite easily get back at the U.S. Via a variety of ways. That won't happen. Also, the U.S. market is the biggest buyer of Chinese manufactured goods, so that deal is not going to go down. And if China and India refuse this, it would have been a non-starter from the very beginning. So perhaps it would have been better for the Obama administration to admit that they'd made a grave mistake.
India's severely energy deficient. It imports 70, growing 80, perhaps even up to 90% of its overall requirements. Iran becomes a very attractive source for acquiring energy resources.
And many say the sanctions simply won't work without India, since it's Iran's biggest oil customer.
Now, this downgrade could raise the borrowing costs for banks, but could it also help the politicians push through their agenda of global financial governance?
Well, they, of course, will use this opportunity to put forward more global governance, more centralized government, more command and control, more state-run operations, less democracy, less market activity, less free competition. So all of those things are being displaced by state-controlled, command and controlled, bank and fascist relationship with governments, and that's growing to the detriment of people in Greece who are now suffering the real consequences. People are dying in the street. They can't afford health care. They can't afford food. That's the result of this incredible kleptocracy that has destroyed the global banking system. And nobody, particularly in America, particularly Barack Obama and his administration, are doing anything about it.
And so the United States finds itself in the position of courting India's cooperation for its plan to be successful. Hillary Clinton recently visited India during her Asia tour, trying to sell America's strategy to isolate Iran. But leaders here in India won't budge. While they have reduced imports on Iranian oil slightly, they say they won't ever stop completely. Their reasoning extends beyond just India's energy needs. With one of the fastest growing economies in the world, Iran is an important partner for India to continue to grow in the future.
And Priya, has the US provided any alternatives then for India?
That's right, Carrie. Actually, the United States is trying to help India, as they're saying, look for alternatives to Iran for their energy needs. And two of the options they're actually saying are Iraq and Saudi Arabia. So, you know, they're trying to help India, but India is saying, listen, we have our own relationship with Iran. We need this oil. So as of right now, all indications are pointing to the fact that they're not going to stop buying Iranian oil despite Washington's urges.
Okay, RT's Priya Shraddha talking to us live from New Delhi. Thank you.
But you can't pay too much mind to media and publicity. You've seen what's been happening in Syria and the publicity surrounding that. And seeing a very red-faced Hillary Clinton, we are in a very delicate time in terms of global financial transactions. And it's not prudent to proceed with ill-thought-out actions such as taking unilateral action, declaring unilateral sanctions against Iran and threatening other nations. The U.S. is, for all intents and purposes, bankrupted with $100 trillion worth of debts. I don't know. I don't know who's going to pay up this gamble if it doesn't work for the United States.
Kian Mukhtari, columnist and commentator.
Again.
I'm going to just have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for enlightening us on that subject.
Indians say isolating Iran won't work, and it's time for the Americans to take a step back.
We are trying to encourage the Americans to look at the bigger picture, because not only are we going to be affected, but they too will be affected. So I think perhaps, and it's our hope, that better sense will prevail and that there will be a peaceful outcome.
Flexing its muscles, protecting its interests, and not bowing down to pressure from the West. Priya Shraddha, RT, New Delhi, India.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. This is Houston. Say again, please.